How's Shane Carthy?
Well, how are you?
How's things?
Excellent.
You're busy. You're a busy man these days.
Yes, very very busy. Yeah. The whole blog coming out and everything.
Yeah.
I've been fairly busy between radio interviews and one-on-one interviews and all sorts. So it's been great. It's been great.
Jeez, thanks for taking the time to meet me. So
No problem at all. My pleasure.
yeah, so you done a blog with your story, battling with depression and then the recovery of it and everything.
Yeah.
And it gave a really good insight into kind of the background of what's going on with a person that is struggling with that, and kind of the steps then to how recovery is possible and how positive change is always possible.
Yeah.
So it was brilliant. It was a brilliant blog. Just shout out to Lauren Guilfoy. She shared it on her Instagram, and then I read into it. So I said I'd give you a shout and see if we could meet up.
Yeah.
So thanks for meeting up with me.
No problem at all.
Do you want to give a little bit, I suppose, a bit of background into where everything started for you and stuff?
Yeah, I guess I'll even bring you right back to, like, say, primary school, where I would have been from Portmarnock, a relatively small area, and I would have been lucky enough to be popular amongst, lots of group of friends.
You're
And
a cool dude.
yes, well, that's what I like to think. But no, I went to my local primary school, and as my mum and dad did with my three older sisters, threw them into everything: Gaelic soccer, hurling, tennis, whatever it was. Just threw me into it, and lucky enough was relatively talented at anything I threw my hand at, and that automatically from a very very early stage put me up on a pedestal. I never like kind of be up there.
You were the jock, were you?
I was the jock of the group, I guess. Yeah, you could say, for want of a better word. But no, it was one of those things where I just didn't want to be up in the pedestal. But given my talents and anything that I did throw my hand at, and especially at a young age, you're succeeding, you're thinking you're the cool dude amongst the group, So that kind of transpired into where my Gaelic career would have started from very very early on. From a smaller context, an under 12 Easter tournament, where I was invited along to take part in what it was North, South, and West Dublin, a small Easter tournament. And again, I was the only one in my area that was invited along to these trials and to take part.
Okay.
I ended up captaining the team, and we ended up winning it. Again, very very small context, but at that time, at under 12s, you're still putting on that Dublin jersey, regardless of it's under 12s or senior football. It's a massive thing. So
still a big story for your friends and everything, like.
Exactly. What did you do at the weekend? I was representing Dublin.
What were you doing?
Yeah, what were you doing? That kind of thing. So it was again putting me up on that pedestal that I didn't want to be on.
Yeah. But
I kind of continued that trend into secondary school. Again, found that transition fairly seamless in terms of. For a lot of people, I know it's hard to make that transition from primary to secondary. That settling in period for me was very seamless. Again, lucky to be, known around the area and make friends quite easily from the very outset. My Dublin career continued along that path, from under 13s, 14s, development teams. Again, Easter tournaments, summer tournaments, that kind of thing. And threw my hand at anything and everything again in secondary school. And was quite successful at it in anything I've done. So I guess my footballing career in particular was successful from very early on. It continued into first, second, third year, and coming into fourth year then was when my kind of, you could say, nearly my story kind of took pace. Then my Dublin career really kind of started then at Dublin Minors. Desi Farrell, who's very instrumental in my story and in my life today to where I am. Came into my life at this stage, and that's when I had that decision. Right, I'm gonna solely focus on Gaelic football and give it a real go.
He was the manager, was he?
He was the manager, yeah. So he was our manager for the 2 years that I spent at Dublin Minor football. As I said, in fourth year, that was our first year, my first year at Dublin Minor football, and the famous All Ireland final of ourselves versus Tipperary, where Tipperary got a famous last minute goal. Unfortunately, I was part of that, and so we're
tough one to swallow.
Yeah, no, that was the thing. It was very very difficult at the stage, but luckily enough, myself and a couple of little lads could right the wrong the following year, where we were in obviously our second year of minor. Again, Desi Farrell was taking it at that stage, so it kind of came into about middle of fifth year, and that would have coincided with the first signs or symptoms that I didn't recognise at the time, which was depression. It began from, you know, very sporadically. I'm talking about once, twice a month, where, you know, I would wake up and I wouldn't really, you know, I could have things that I was looking forward to or should look forward to, and I wasn't. I just couldn't get myself up for it. I just couldn't make sense of why I was feeling this way.
Yeah.
But as I alluded to previously, I was up in this pedestal and I had this, you could say, personality or persona to live up to. So I just felt like I couldn't show any weakness. So I just continued along the path. In football, as I've talked about in my blog, is that it was a huge, and still is a huge, escapism for me, and a coping mechanism, you could say, especially at that stage. So the football inevitably kind of continued along that path, and it brought us to the September, where, as I said, we could right that wrong of the previous year, and luckily we did, winning the All-Irelands of 2012 against Meath. So that would have been coinciding again with about 6 months into my journey. What I didn't know still at this stage, I hadn't confided in anyone, from my family to my friends to anyone at all. I was keeping it inside.
A hard thing to understand, especially at that age as well. Like.
Yeah, and that was the thing. I was so naive in thinking that it was hormonal changes going on in my body. I didn't know what it was. There was no, you know, education around mental health. There was no you know, people to maybe look up to or relate to in this kind of field at that time. So as I said, I just continued along the path, and I just kind of pushed it by the wayside at football there as my coping mechanism to kind of release those happy endorphins and you know, keep plodding along as I was. So it came to the November of 2012, halfway through sixth year, coming up to halfway through sixth year, that I got a call off Michael Deegan, who was one of Jim Gavin's selectors, and he called me to say, listen, Jim is wanting in his plans for 2013 campaign, and you know, I'd just turned 18 the previous month, and you know, for me it was a huge thing again.
So that was a call up for the senior panel, was it? Yeah,
I just turned 18 years of age, you know. So and that's the thing again. It was putting me further up on this pedestal that I didn't want to be on. I just wanted to, you know, have football there, plod along, and just get on with my own life. But you know, you can't shy away from the fact that it was a huge honour. I was hugely proud of.
You were too good, was your problem.
I wish. But that was the thing. I was hugely proud of that moment. But again, it was a thing that I wanted to keep inside. More pressure, and inadvertently, I put more pressure on myself. So it would have been coming up to about a year, and these thoughts and feelings were kind of gradually getting worse. Coming to January time, halfway through sixth year, but again, I had very little time to really kind of sit down and think, because I was going from school to training to, you know, back to bed to early up in the morning for another training school, and this kind of continued along that trend. And obviously with the Leaving Cert looming large as well that June, that I just kept on going along and had football there as that escape route, as I keep on alluding to. So coming up to that, it's about a year and a half into my journey now, and these thoughts and feelings are getting a lot worse. But as it always has been, you know, football was there, and lucky enough, again, we were successful that year in the Senior Football of Ireland, where we won it that September. And it was a strange thing. It was, you know, for any footballer, you aspire to be up, lifting the Sam Maguire, and you know, even just representing your own county in any code, at any level. And it should have been a hugely happy feeling, a proud moment for me, my family, and all that. And I found very little joy in that. You know, which was it may sound funny to people, but such was the feeling of numbness and just lack of emotion I could attach to anything. I just simply acknowledged it, and you know, the following week I was straight back down to earth. I was, you know, these thoughts were ever worsening, and unfortunately
back into your own head again, like
back into my own head, having that inner conversation, and still not having a conversation with anyone. I wasn't expressing these emotions externally to anyone. Again, as I said, it was one of those things. If I had said something to someone at that stage, especially just after winning the All-Ireland, 18 years of age, sure, what's wrong with you? You know, you're living the idyllic life. There's nothing wrong with you. You know,
you just won the All-Ireland. Come on, will you cheer up a bit, like?
Exactly. And that was the conversation I had in my head. So that was a difficult thing for me. Even though I wanted to say it so badly, I just felt like I just had to keep up this poker face and mask, which I've talked about in the blog as well. It was 2 years of, you know, essentially acting. I was essentially acting for 2 years to tell people, I was absolutely fine, nothing wrong with me. etc., etc. And it came to the January of 2014, exactly 2 years into my battle with depression. Again, I was unaware of what it was, but unfortunately, I began to have thoughts of taking my own life. Suicidal thoughts kept on coming in and out of my head. A hugely scary thing, you know. I didn't want to feel this way.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was feeling this way, and you know that immediately kind of, you know, spiked in my head in terms of I need to tell someone that, you know, what's going on. I need to, no matter what it is, even though I couldn't make sense of it, I just need to at least express I'm having these thoughts of unfortunately ending my life, which I didn't want to have. So, you know, I just so badly wanted to reach out to someone, and that's why in January 2014 I began to have that inner conversation, you know, that I wanted to express something to my mum and dad.
You need to tell someone something.
And as I said, I was building up to it, and unfortunately, as I said, it was coming to the end of January. A busy campaign again with football, as it always has been, and it was a match in Cork, under 21 football match versus Cork, and as my mum and dad, they were still to this day travel right around the country, and they were at that match that evening. And halfway through the match, my mum received a phone call from my uncle to say her dad had passed away. Again, obviously, I was unaware as I was in the midst of a football match, but they had made their way home, and I had made my way home shortly after on the bus, and I was greeted by them, my mum, my sister, and my dad in the kitchen at 1 o'clock in the morning. Straight away, alarm bells started ringing. You know, what's up? You know, it's not a normal thing to be coming into at this time of night, and my mum conveyed the message that, you know, my granddad passed away. And as I've said before, the numbness and lack of emotion I could attach to anything, I simply acknowledged it. I said I'm sorry to hear that, and I left the room. And I guess that was the first time that my family seen that there was something wasn't quite right. You know, a huge piece of devastating news for anyone to comprehend, and for me just to acknowledge it, to say sorry. And you know, my granddad was very, very close to me. It was a huge advocate of my football and just my life in general, and I looked up to him very much so, and aspired to be like him when I was older, and all the traits that he had. You know, he was just a fantastic man and lived a great life, and yeah, I couldn't attach much emotion to it at all. So
it's one of those things you can't get out of your own head. Like it's
exactly, yeah. And it's that inner kind of conflict in your head that you're going back and forth, and you can't make any sense of it. At that stage, it was, you know, 2 years on, and I was so clouded up in my head, I couldn't unravel what exactly was going on for me. So, as I said, that was the January of 2014, and the funeral had come and gone for my granddad. A couple of weeks had passed at this stage, and again, I was building up the courage to say something to my mum, or my dad, or my family in general. And unfortunately, 6 weeks later, after my grandmother passed, my granny had passed on my mum's side as well. So in the space of 6 weeks, my mum has lost her mum and dad. So the thing for me was, you know, whatever I was going through could not even relate to anything that my mum was going through at that stage. That was something I was thinking, and for me to add a burden to an already decimated family, especially my mum, was just, you know, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I just, you know, from a nearly protection mechanism, that I just held back. I just said, whatever I'm going through can't relate to what she's going through right now. So I kept it in, and again, football was there for me at that time to kind of, you know, be my crutch, be my coping mechanism, and, you know, continue along my ways. But unfortunately, as I said, these thoughts of ending my life never went too far away from me, and it came to a head a couple of weeks after my granny's funeral. It actually came to a head in the April of that year again, in 2014. Just prior to that, a week before, we were playing a Leinster final. A very, very pivotal day in the story, and a strange one for anyone to hear. That, you know, I was greeted that morning by my mum in the sitting room at the time, and she just seen me in a sorrow of tears, just a flood of tears. As to why I was crying, I do not know. At that stage, I couldn't make sense of. I was crying on call, and
just a bit of a breaking point, like
just a complete breaking point. I had no reason to cry. I didn't, you know, at that time I probably did have a reason to cry, but it was just uncontrollable. It was uncontrollable, and it was a thing of, you know, she was asking me what was wrong, and I was getting frustrated on myself because I couldn't make sense of it in my own head.
Yeah.
Never mind convey it to her.
That's one of the hardest things is for me as well. I used to when I suffer from bad anxiety, and it was a thing like that where I used to get very down, and I was stuck in my head the whole time, constantly battling, and anything external, it didn't really matter because it didn't help what was going on in your head. And for me, when people used to ask you, do you know, like, what you wanted to try and describe it to them as good as you could, so that they could help you, but you couldn't even. I used to just say, look, I'm not feeling myself, and I can't tell you why I'm not feeling myself, but there's just something going on here that I can't explain. It's awful frustrating, like. It
is, and I completely relate to that, and that's exactly at that time I was having that conversation with myself. Why can't I make sense of this? And it was nearly an argument in your own head, isn't it? It's one of those things that you're then beating yourself up even more.
Why can't I get on top of this? Like, what's wrong with me?
What's going on? Why can't I just figure this out? And that just adds to an already, dampened soul and dampened kind of emotionless figure at that stage in what I was. And my mum was hugely helpful in that sense, where she had contacted my middle sister Mairead. She knew she needed to break up the trend of, I couldn't just sit there and be in my own head. So as you do on a Leinster final day, you go for a massive hike up the Howth cliffs. But that was the thing. My sister Mairead just wanted me to get out of the house and break that kind of train of thought, which is great, which was really helpful for an hour and a half. It didn't say much in the walk, but all I needed was that comfort of that someone beside me, knowing that there was someone there to care for me, there was someone there to look after me. And the walk had come and gone, and I was back in the car and back in my own head, and all these thoughts start bundling right back in. And I just, it was a scary thing for me, because at that stage it was the first time I admitted that not even football could do anything for me. I was thinking, I cannot go out on this pitch tonight in Portlaoise at 7:30 tonight. I can't face it. I was so close to ringing Desi Farrell. I don't know why to this day I didn't make that phone call. I never went through with it. I was meant to contact them to say, listen, I can't go out in front of a packed crowd in Portlaoise and face this. I'm just too far gone in my own head to comprehend going out and facing a packed crowd and a hostile kind of environment, and there's too much going on for me. And to this day I don't know why I didn't make that phone call. It then transpired that I inevitably played the match, and it was one of the most satisfying feelings I've still to this day that I've ever got, stepping out on a pitch for 60 minutes. I was like a kid out there. I was like a kid out there for 60 minutes, and I hadn't a care in the world. It was me, football, and everything I knew was right in front of me. And all my troubles just seemed to subside for those 60 minutes. And again, adding to that, something I still can't explain to this day, I had half a bottle of Lucozade all day before the match, and I ended up being awarded man of the match.
Go ahead.
Which was
that must have been a strange one to try and figure out, like,
yeah, and
your head around it.
I was still thinking, how have I done this? How have I went out and done this? And it's something I still can't make sense to this day. And again, like the previous year, winning that All Ireland, winning the Leinster final, and being awarded man of the match, I got very little satisfaction out of that. It was, again, it should have been a hugely proud moment for me, for myself personally, for the team, and for my family, and I just couldn't attach any emotion to it still. I simply went back into the dressing room while the lads were celebrating. I showered up and was out there before the celebrations even ended. I was in the car back home, and I was getting ready to go to Stockholm, where my oldest sister Michelle lives. The whole idea behind that was, when my mum and dad eventually found out what was going on for me, they'd booked this trip in the hope that I probably confided in my older sister a bit more than I did with anyone else in the family, as I did for years previous. And the whole thinking was that maybe I'll go out there and say whatever they thought that I was keeping in. Little did they know I didn't really know what I was keeping in. So I went out there, and unfortunately it just didn't materialise. I let her know that I was having thoughts of ending my life, and it was a hugely scary feeling. I even had thoughts of, around that time, should I and would I do it around here when no one else knows me. And all this, you know, even saying this to you now, it just doesn't, it shouldn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's your irrational thoughts, just, you know, you seem to make sense of them at that time. You seem to think that's an okay thing to think, when it really, really isn't. And again, for my sister to take that on and to hear it was a hugely scary thing. It was something that, like, she's so far away.
It's been crazy, especially when you're just after winning man of the match and everyone's thinking
he's on top of the world.
Yeah.
And this is the thing where everyone thought I was living this idyllic life. Little did they know what was going on that morning when I was collecting that man of the match award. Little did they know, anyone know, what was going on for me in those previous 2 years. And again, it comes to a head when I went over to my sister and still couldn't convey what exactly was going on for me. So that trip was essentially null and void, and I'd left her, and it was probably a hugely scary thing for her to even comprehend that, you know, he's so far away, and I just want to help him so bad, but I don't know how I can help him, because he doesn't know himself what exactly was going on for him, you know. So I came back and I'd let Desi Farrell know at that time what was going on for me, and he said, listen, we'll put the right things in place and get you the help. And I was due to meet a psychologist on the Wednesday, and just previous to that we were training on the Tuesday. We were 11 days out from an All-Ireland semi-final, and I just continued as I did for those 2 years to plod along with football. And it came to a head where on that Tuesday, as I said, we were training in DCU, and we're due to have a tactical meeting in Castleknock Hotel straight after it. So my mother and father, obviously, as I said, knew what was going on for me at that stage, so they didn't want me driving the car on my own. So my dad brought me to the training. The training had ended, and I'd get into the car, and we were making our way from DCU to Castleknock Hotel. And in the middle of it, my heart rate spiked. I started getting panicked. I didn't know exactly what was going on for me. I just needed to get out of the car, and I'd asked my dad to pull over to the side of the road. And what transpired from there was a panic attack. The next thing I knew, I woke up in St. Patrick's Mental Hospital.
It's scary.
Hugely scary thing.
Did you black out, like?
Essentially blacked out from what I've been told from my dad. I was just screaming. I was looking at the ground. I was smacking the ground. I was, you know, he was looking at me, and I was looking at him with that kind of glassy-eyed look that nothing was coming through. I didn't even notice a figure there. And he had brought me to Castleknock Hotel. Desi and Mick Galvin had made the necessary calls, and the next thing I knew I was put into St. Patrick's Mental Hospital and woken up the next morning to be greeted. It's mad, absolutely crazy, you know. And I was greeted by two nurses, softly spoken nurses, and telling me where I was. And you know, the first thing that came out of their mouth were, "Hello, Shane, you're in St. Patrick's Mental Hospital." And once I heard the word mental hospital, and that was the stigma, and still to this day the stigma that surrounds mental health, I immediately, I don't know if you've seen the film Shutter Island?
No.
It's kind of, you know, it's that analogy of a mental institution or a hospital.
All the loopies.
All the loopies. Straight jackets, dark dreary room, people headbutting the wall. And that's immediately, you know, it sounds funny now looking back at it. That's what I thought. That's what I thought I was going into. I was told, you know, I'd go into the breakfast room and be around other patients, and I just didn't want to be anywhere around them, because I thought that's what I was walking into. It was anything but. I walked into that breakfast room and I was greeted by people still to this day that I'm very close with and very good friends with, and struck a chord, and you know, they made the transition very, very simple for me and made me feel welcome. And you know, all those thoughts that I had in my head, what a mental hospital really was anything but.
Yeah. It goes to show just the power of movies. And exactly,
and you know, the thoughts and the stigma behind it, you know, that's what people think it is, because it's portrayed, as you said, in movies and anything else, you know, and it's anything but, as I've said. So I spent 11 weeks in total there, and a couple of kind of key kind of things had happened around that time. Desi, as I said, was a huge helping hand in my recovery and getting everything going, and I owe him huge gratitude to where I am today. And also Mick Galvin, obviously my parents and my close friends, but in particular those two guys, you know. And it came into about a couple of weeks into my recovery, and I still had this thought of, you know, I wanted to play in the All-Ireland final. We'd won the All-Ireland semi-final, and obviously I wasn't part of that. But I soon realised, you know, I'd been putting this off for so long. I'd been pushing this mental health battle away from me for so long that
Yeah.
I needed to eventually own up to it and acknowledge and accept that I needed to solely focus on this. And Mick Galvin put it to me in hospital, you know, Shane, if this is the thing of you need to look after yourself and go after your mental health for 2 or 3 months, you have 80 plus years of your life to look forward to. Put it in that perspective that you put your heart and soul into this. This is the only thing that exists in your life right now. You can live a beautiful life then after. And it was just like, it was nearly like a eureka moment kind of thing, you know.
Yeah,
when
put the pressure off with the football.
Just completely forget about all that. Forget about all that. And that's when I kind of posed a challenge to myself that I've always, you know, as I said, been lucky enough to be playing at a high level, and for anyone can relate to it. You know, you want to be the best you can be. You want to strive for excellence all the time. And I flipped that on its head and posed a challenge to myself. How can I be the best I can be at my mental health? So that was my sole goal for those 2-3 months that I was in hospital. And coinciding with that was why maybe I brought out the blog as well, that I need to realise that, you know, whether I like it or not, I have an effect further afield than I really think on social media or what I do out in public, and for people in general, what I say or do has an effect further afield than I really think. And that's why I came out public at that stage when Desi released a statement through the county board to say I was receiving treatment for depression. The whole thing was, my thinking behind it and why I brought out the blog was, I never want anyone to be in that position that I was in for far too long. It was far too long that I kept those inner demons inside.
Yeah.
And I never ever want to see anyone in that position that I almost took as well. I almost ended it all right there and then, and I never ever want to see that turmoil experienced by anyone.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it may be in a small context in terms of what I'm doing, but I just hope then it's going to illuminate the path for so many other people to come out and express and feel okay. You know, this guy up on this pedestal is exactly like everyone else. I'm no different to you or to anyone around here. You know, I'm no different.
Doesn't matter if you've an All-Ireland medal around your neck or not. Like,
doesn't matter.
If you're feeling down, you're feeling down.
Exactly, and it can affect anyone and everyone in this life. And I just wanted to normalise that for anyone thinking that I'm invincible or anyone else up in a pedestal or living this idyllic life is invincible, and it was anything but. So, as I said, 11 weeks in St. Patrick's Mental Hospital, and I learned a lot and clouded the thought that was going through my head for far too long. I'm internally grateful for the amount of work that psychologists and doctors and support that I got at that stage. And I came to, you know, post that I've been out 4.5 years now. It's transpired that I've done many talks since then. I've attended and graduated from DCU in sports science. I'm still involved in Gaelic football in a very big context in terms of I went back to the inter-county setup and was part of the All-Ireland winning teams in 15 and 16. I was part of the league campaigns in 17 and 18. Unfortunately, was let go from the summer panels in 17 and 18. Did
you beat Mayo? We on at that time.
At 16, I think it was 16. Yeah. So sorry about that. but even at that, you know, a huge low for something I've been so used to, but you know, being around the inter-county setup and to be told you're not good enough or perceived to be not good enough and let go from the panel was a thing that I was then saying, how am I going to deal with this mentally? How am I going to huge low that I wasn't able to deal with so many years ago? I you know, I pushed it to the side. I didn't want to think about it, and I difference is nowadays I face up to it. I accept it for what it is. It does hurt very much so, but I put a positive spin on it that, you know, I need to get back to where I once was, and you know, there's no stopping me doing it. You know, I just simply have to be in the right mind frame. I need to be positive. I need to work even harder now to get back to where I once was, and I'm in the right mind frame to be that way and to accept these, you know, low feelings that I'll inevitably have regarding football and regarding other things that are going on in my life. But I'm so much better equipped nowadays with the tools and coping mechanisms and everything that I have there that I've learned in years previous to go ahead and do that. So
it's a crazy story.
It is, yeah, and it's ever evolving.
Looking back on it, do you look back at it and say, like, fuck me, that was crazy how your mind was working back then?
Yeah, I guess you could say that I even, you know, from a lot of things that was going through my head, that if it was a case of if it was what I know now, you know, back then, if I knew how to deal with these things, like I know my triggers, I know what to do when I'm feeling a certain way, or certain things that don't work for me and do work for me, you know, I think it wasn't any fault of my own, it wasn't a fault of anyone else's. It was just the fact that there was so little education around mental health and so little talk about it, that I couldn't help but feel this way, and
didn't know how to deal with it, like.
Didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't have the kind of Cusacks or the Alan O'Mara's or the Ashton Thompsons to look up to, who have come out and, you know, express how they're feeling, and normalise the conversation somewhat, to say, listen, it's okay, that this is depression, this is anxiety, you know, and these are things that, you know, everyday people go through.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just the thing of educating yourself around what's going on for you, accepting them for what they are, and going out and seeking that help. You know. Did you
find one of the hardest parts, like you were saying earlier, in reaching out and saying, you know, telling someone what was going on, was that you just didn't understand it yourself?
I guess there was a few things. I guess I found it hugely difficult because it was such a long period of keeping in. It wasn't as easy as, okay, I'm just going to say to someone what was going on for me.
Yeah.
You know, it was a thing of, I think it was coming to a point where I simply was going to do something that I didn't want to do, and it was either I go and tell someone, or I might take the step that I didn't want to take, but I couldn't get away from it. You know, so it was taken out of my hands. But looking back, it was never healthy to think that way. It was never healthy to say this is okay to keep in for 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, and it seems like such a, you know, if any bit of advice I would give people, it seems like such a simple thing, or you know, sure, if I talk, nothing's going to happen. You know, that's the foundation of where I've come from and where I am today. That started from a very, very small foundational kind of point of view of, I just said I'm not feeling great. I said I'm having these thoughts. I'm not feeling great. I have a low mood, etc., etc. And that transpired into the journey that I continue on to today.
Yeah.
From, as I said, such a small thing of just saying I'm not feeling okay. Everything has transpired from there. If you don't talk, it's not going to materialize. And you don't have to. This is the thing. I'm not saying to people you have to announce it to the world.
Yeah, you don't have to go on social media and tell everyone.
No, and that's the thing. And I don't expect, and I don't want people to think they have to think, you know, do that. I simply am coming from the fact that, from my personal point of view, that I'm lucky that, you know, I have people who look up to me and I have an effect further afield, as I said, than I really do think, or I know. And, you know, I just want people to feel comfortable that they can say it to their mum or dad, they can say it to their best friend, and you can keep it in that small circle. There's absolutely no issue with that. There's no point. I'm not saying to people, put it in a public scale. You don't have to. Just go out. Please go out and seek that help.
That can be more damaging than good sometimes. Exactly,
and that's the thing. That's what it is with social media, and that's why there was a certain amount of apprehension maybe for me when I was posting this blog. So that was the whole thing of why I wanted to, as I've alluded to earlier, I do these talks now, you know, but they're at a certain time, they're at a certain place, they're limited to a certain amount of people, and I just wanted to get my message out there in a wider context. And I was thinking, how am I going to do this? And that was obviously through the blog, which is I've been absolutely amazed with the feedback and the reaction from it in a good way, and it's reached people further afield than I really thought as well. And it's hopefully, and I know from a few messages that I've gotten from people that it's helped them take that step that they were hesitant in thinking, you know, will I, won't I, and thankfully they have, and hopefully a lot more people come out and express how they're feeling, and just for everyone just to normalise that conversation.
Yeah.
You know.
So when you went into hospital and everything, what was the first steps in your recovery? Was it like educating yourself, or was it them educating you on? It was
essentially a bit of back and forth. I think they were just, you know, they'd let me know what it was. It wasn't, as I said, I was diagnosed with depression. They'd given me the kind of relative science behind it in terms of your serotonin levels, and, you know, adding to that, you know, they said they were going to give me antidepressants, Prozac, to make sure my serotonin levels were at a certain level where I could function. Yeah. I was in a better mood, and that was the thing. I wouldn't, and you know, I'm not saying it's anything right or wrong. I wouldn't be a huge advocate of, you know, solely depending on medication, because medication is a crutch. I seen it there as something I needed, but it wasn't something solely dependent, because for me it brought me to a level that I could think straight. I could, you know, adapt and be able to attack the day. But then in conjunction with that, I needed talk therapy. I needed to express how I was feeling then. So it was a thing that I wasn't a huge fan of, but I think that I knew I needed in terms of every process and every step that I needed in my recovery. Yeah,
it's a scary thing to be thinking, you know, I need to take this pill to feel okay.
Exactly, and I think that's even the, you know, that's even very much stigmatized, the overprescription of antidepressants and things like that, and thinking, you know, taking this will just make it all okay. You know, it doesn't uncloud the thoughts that you have there. You need to talk, you need to seek the professional help that is out there for people to, you know, uncloud these thoughts and tackle problems, unravel this, whatever cloudiness is going on upstairs, you know.
Yeah. So was it then part of trying to get put a lifestyle in place that you knew was going to help with your with your depression and stop you from falling back into that cycle again? Yeah,
so it was in hospital. I was introduced to the YAP program, which is the young adult program for 18 to 25 year olds, and essentially with that it was essentially like getting a timetable for the week. You had anything from CBT, for people that don't know, it's cognitive behavioural therapy, essentially looking at a thought or looking at a certain thing and looking on the other side of the coin. You know, say for example, well, as I've just said about the football, you know, you could look at it as a negative thing, you know, getting let go from the inter-county setup, and looking at it on the other side, how can I improve as a player and make myself better, and, you know, train even harder to get back to that level. So it's kind of, you know, recognizing thoughts, accepting them for what they are, and essentially, you know, bringing yourself back down to an even level, instead of, you know, having these spikes of, you know, have emotion of anger, fear, sadness, this kind of thing. Just simply accepting them for what they are, and inevitably, as everyone does, it's conveyor belt emotions that everyone goes through every day. You're not going to go through a full day feeling happy.
Yeah,
you're going to have a mixture of emotions, and it's simply accepting them for what they are, and noticing them, and just continuing on, and just normalizing. Okay, this is what's happened for me. This is maybe why, and, you know, looking at it from a helicopter kind of point of view, it's like, what is exactly, you know, taking yourself out of your body and kind of looking down, what's happening for me here, instead of, you know, rationalize it and not having a rational thought process, which is what a lot of people who go through depression or anxiety unfortunately have.
Yeah. Your kind of pathways of thinking, normally they lead towards the negative side.
Exactly.
Instead of being rational and saying, look, it's okay, I can, you know, if I think positively about this, I can see it in a different way, kind of.
Yeah, and that's what that CBT class kind of educated upon. There was other things that, you know, through talk therapy, through my psychologists and doctors and nurses, noticing what triggered me. You know, if it was a thing of, you know, I went into a packed room and I knew what my anxiety would spike up, just simply don't do that. You know, if you know it's not going to work for you, don't put yourself in that position. And if it is a thing of, you know, you don't have a choice in the matter, it's about then kind of visualization and trying to pre-plan and pre-visualize this moment. So essentially you're going in like a rabbit through headlights. You know, you go into this situation, you've rehearsed it already, so your heightened sense of awareness isn't going to be as high, because you've essentially seen this role play, you've seen this play out. And that was another thing, you know. And it was a constant even thing of the patients around the hospital themselves. You know, I always bounce ideas off. I always refer to it as my toolbox. So for example, there was one lady I spoke to, you know, knitting helped her. I was like, okay, I don't really think this is going to work, but I was open-minded. I was like, right, I'll try knitting. It didn't work for me. Okay, pushed it aside.
Everyone was getting scarves that Christmas and stuff,
well, not for me anyway. But, you know, running worked for me. Threw that into my toolbox. You know, what else was it? You know, music was a huge helping hand in my recovery. I put that into my toolbox. So constantly having conversations with patients around what worked for them, what didn't, and being open-minded enough to try them. And not everything is going to work, but it's not one size fits all for anyone going through depression or anxiety or anything else, any mental health problems that people may have. It's not one size fits all, and I think it's important for people to realise that, and to share different ideas, and bounce off each other, in terms of having that conversation, what works, what doesn't.
It is one of those things where you have to figure it out yourself. Someone can't lay the blueprint for you.
Yeah, and people can set you along the right path. Yeah. But it's simply about then, as I said, giving yourself that task of, okay, let's go about this and see how I can approach it. And what works for me may not work for you. Running works for me, it may not work for you. It may be a thing of, I don't know, you may have to, knitting works for that lady, it doesn't work for me. So as you said, it's not one size fits all. It's about going through your own path, your own journey, but also having that helping hand through psychologists, friends, family, doctors, whoever it may be. So
coming through it, if you could offer advice to someone, what would be the main things you'd say to them?
Number one of what I've touched upon already is the foundation of it all is simply talk. It doesn't have to be in a wide context. Simply say it to your mum, dad, sister, friend, whoever it is. That would be my number one thing. Number two is realize that there is help out there. There is other people going through what you're going through. It's a hugely difficult thing. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to go through. It never is, and it never will be. But simply acknowledge that you're not the only one along this journey, and it is okay not to feel okay. It's a cliche kind of saying, but that's what it is. It is okay not to be okay. And I guarantee you, once you get your message out there and convey what exactly is going on for you, you're gonna go along that path, and it's not going to be an even keel. It's not going to be a linear path, and it never is, and it never is for me. I know I have my good and bad days. I still have my good and bad days, but thankfully my bad days are nowhere near as bad as what they once were. So my top three would be, simply talk, acknowledge that you're not the only one, that it is going through what you're going through, and it is a normal thing to feel this way, and it's not alien to say you're feeling this way, and it's simply get your message out there as best you can.
And the crazy thing as well is that there is people go to college for this, to help people come out of it. Yeah. So there's so much information, and there's so much known about mental health out there that we don't know in the public. Yeah. Which is kind of crazy.
It is, and that's why I've touched upon it. We've come a long way to where it was for me back in 2013, 2014, that kind of thing. But as you said, there's so much more that we can touch upon and bring up to the surface and let people know exactly what mental health is and everything around it, and the help out there, and the education part around it, that we need to continue along that path and continue along that trend, that we're constantly striving and constantly getting the message out there to people.
Deadly. Thanks a million for having the chat.
No problem at all. Appreciate it.
I think Mayo we're going to do it this year. I think this is our year.
No comment.
50, I'm thinking a little wager here now. €50. 200, are we shaking it?
Here and then.
Just to make things interesting.
You'll look at this next year.
I'm not promoting gambling now or anything. Well, look, thanks a million for meeting me.
No
hopefully, I'm sure, definitely there is people that can relate to the story and take some information, take some tips from that. Yeah. So thanks a million.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and follow us on our social media channels to keep up to date with what we're doing. Check out our website smirkclothing.ie. We have some cool gear on there. A brand with a purpose, using our platform to provide much needed information and tips on looking after your mental health. So thanks a million for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Good luck.